Stay tuned till the end of this episode to find out how you can get your very own one of these. Today is July 18th, 2018. On this day, 10 years ago, the movie Mamma Mia was released in theaters. Based on the hit musical featuring songs by the Swedish pop group ABBA, the film wasn't exactly a hit with critics, but was very popular with audiences around the world. By the end of its run, Mamma Mia grossed nearly $609 million worldwide. That's quite the accomplishment, especially when you consider that it came out the exact same day as The Dark Knight, the movie we're actually going to talk about today. I just like reminding people that Mamma Mia and The Dark Knight came out at the exact same time. I think that's pretty funny. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. What more is there to say about The Dark Knight? In the past decade, pretty much everybody on the internet has given his or her opinion on the film. They've given deep and not so deep analysis of it. They've praised Heath Ledger and lampooned Christian Bale. However, and this might just be me, but over time I feel like The Dark Knight isn't as fondly remembered as it was back then when compared to other similar films. It's still pretty well liked, but since its release we've seen movies like The Avengers and the MCU as a whole really take comic book movies to the next level, especially in terms of representing the source material in live action. We've seen movies like Mad Max Fury Road and John Wick go deeper and further into the more auteur-style, deep, thoughtful action movie style. And of course, we've seen the current crop of DC movies which have basically done everything they could to sully the name of Batman on screen. Sorry, that they just do that. People will mostly blame The Dark Knight for a lot of the negative tropes that occur in big-budget cinema today, like grim and gritty superheroes, dark and serious action movies, a charismatic villain that overshadows the main hero. In fact, a lot of people today have no problem either insinuating or just flat out stating that they don't think The Dark Knight is that good of a film. And you know what? That's perfectly fine. I'm not here to say whether or not one person's opinion is right or wrong. It's just that to me, even 10 years later, I still think The Dark Knight is the greatest comic book movie of all time. Now, I don't think it's a perfect movie. I do think there are some flaws in it. The imposter Batman story really doesn't go anywhere. The fight scenes, while better than they were in Batman Begins, still aren't as good as similar films in the genre. And also this, like, everybody gives The Last Jedi crap for Mary Poppins Leia, but nobody talks about how weird the Bat-Pod flip looks. And while I feel like it's important to talk about the negatives as well as the positives in a movie, especially in a retrospective, I'm not gonna do that today. For the next 10 or so minutes, I'm going to be praising the hell out of The Dark Knight. So, if seeing somebody actually like a popular movie triggers you in any way, you might want to turn this video off. But first, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Let's just start with the Joker. Now, I can't really say much more about Heath Ledger's legendary performance that hasn't already been said, so I'll just say this. In addition to Ledger's performance, I want to give a special shout out to director Christopher Nolan and writers Jonathan Nolan and David Goyer for how they use the Joker in the film. The Joker is only on screen for about 30 minutes. That's roughly 20% of the film's runtime. So when he does show up on screen and we experience the great performance of Heath Ledger, we feel his presence even more so when he's not on screen. Now, it's because of Heath Ledger's great performance that a lot of people won't say that The Dark Knight is a great Batman movie. They'll say it's a great movie that just so happens to have Batman in it. Now, if you ask me, that's a backhanded compliment. The Dark Knight is a Batman movie through and through. It's a movie all about Batman and how he's struggling to change and evolve to fight a new kind of villain. He starts the film off as this confident vigilante who earnestly believes that he's close to ending his crusade on crime, when all of a sudden he must learn how to deal with this dangerous new threat. A threat that doesn't play by the quote-unquote rules. Are his methods working? Does he have to cross the line to save the day? Will that turn him into the real villain?
You got rules.
The Joker, he's got no rules.
You want this guy, you got one way. But you already know what that is.
How you gonna let a couple more people get killed while you make up your mind?
Now, some people don't see this as a Batman movie because it takes place in a realistic city and not this gothic hellscape like we're used to from the Tim Burton films, the animated series, or even the Schumacher films. But to me, that doesn't really matter. Gotham City, to me, is a city that happens to have a lot of crime in it. It was Will Brooker, a Batman historian, a job title I wish I had, who who once said the defining characteristic of Gotham City is that there must always be crime, and The Dark Knight has that in its Gotham City. The city may look clean during the day, but at night, with its dark color palette, Gotham looks just as dirty and scary as anything somebody like Jim Lee, David Finch, or Tony Daniels would draw in the comics. Also, how can you say that this isn't a Batman movie when you have imagery like this? This stuff right here is just as comic book accurate as anything seen in Batman the Animated Series. Now, we could argue that The Dark Knight is just as much a Harvey Dent movie as it is a Batman movie, and you know what? That's a fair thing to say. The film is just as much about Harvey Dent's struggle with the rising Joker threat as it is Batman's struggle. While Batman is able to rise to the occasion, Harvey Dent falls, succumbing to the Joker's madness and becoming Two-Face in the end. And Aaron Eckhart is the perfect Harvey Dent. In addition to looking the part, he has the right amount of passion and intensity, and when he finally becomes Two-Face, he fills the role with the rage and sorrow that that character needs. Speaking of the performances in this movie, this might still be the best casted superhero film ever made. And yes, that includes Christian Bale's Batman, the best live-action Batman. At me. He has everything I'm looking for in both a Batman and a Bruce Wayne. His public Bruce Wayne is just the right amount of flamboyant without coming across as overly childish and annoying. His private Bruce Wayne, when he's with Alfred or Rachel or Lucius, is almost a completely different person. He's much more comfortable in his own skin, confident, but also as honest as he possibly can be with himself. And when he puts the mask on and becomes Batman, it's nearly perfect. The right blend of smart, brutal, stoic, and determined. Now, while I have my problems with the fight scenes in this movie, that's mostly due to the way they're shot and edited. The way Christian Bale actually fights in this movie is what I'm all about when I look at Batman fighting. His feet are firmly planted, he's all fists and elbows, he's clearly a capable fighter, but he's not a showman. There's no flippy shit for this guy. I know Batman's supposed to be a highly trained ninja and great with all forms of martial arts, but to me, there's something a lot more scary and intense of a guy just standing there punching the crap out of people rather than somebody doing backflips and stuff. That's a Robin thing. Also, there's a lot less of Batman doing this like there was in Batman Begins. The Casey fighting method just looks silly. Now, as for the voice, look, nobody is Kevin Conroy, but to me, I will take Bale's angry and harsh and aggressive growl over Ben Affleck's Megatron voice any day of the week.
I'm not wearing hockey pads. Someone knows where he is. Where are they? You'll be in a padded cell forever.
As for the rest of the cast, there has never been a better Commissioner Gordon than Gary Oldman. I may still hear Bob Hastings from the animated series when I read the comics, but in terms of the overall portrayal, Gary Oldman has not been beat yet. He, more than anyone, is pushed right up to his limit. By the end of the film, he's exhausted and exasperated, but god damn it will he get the job done with his conscience intact. Michael Caine was of course great as Alfred, Morgan Freeman as always perfect as Lucius Fox, and I want to give a special shout out to Maggie Gyllenhaal. She took over the Rachel Dawes role from Katie Holmes and she's a much better fit here. Her Rachel is brave and smart and used to a much greater effect. I was legitimately sad when she died in the movie. I was really growing to like her. She made me care about the worst character from the previous film. If that's not good acting, I don't know what is. And even beyond the cast, my god, this is a technical marvel of a movie. This is one of the most beautiful films I have ever seen. Wally Pfister's cinematography is simply unparalleled. And for my money, this is the only big budget Hollywood movie to do IMAX filming well in any capacity. The only film that comes close to using IMAX cameras and IMAX footage this good is The Dark Knight Rises. Christopher Nolan was a big proponent of using practical effects in his films, and it pays off big time here. The movie has not aged one bit. It looks just as good now as it did in 2008. The script for the film just pushed action movies and comic book movies further than they had been pushed in years. The script is just dripping with personal touches, personal moments, and a lot of symbolism that makes sense and isn't just heavy-handed nonsense. I mean, sure, it may be a beginner's guide to film theory, but What's wrong with that? What's wrong with having a gateway film to the wider world of analysis and criticism? And what better film than The Dark Knight? I mean, just, God, I love this movie. I really do. I can recite it practically from memory. I'm always finding new and interesting things about it. I have a lot of toys from the movie. I have pretty much all the Movie Master figures still in box somewhere. I married a girl named Rachel. It's pretty fanboyish if you ask me.
When you and Rachel!
I've probably owned more copies of this one film than any other film I've ever owned, and that includes Star Wars, by the way. Got my original DVD version. It's a Steelbook Collector's Edition from FYE. Remember that place? A Target exclusive Blu-ray set that comes in the shape of his mask. Hokey, but whatever. My wife's DVD copy of The Dark Knight, because you never know, accidents happen. Of course, this friggin' monstrosity, the entire collector's set that you can get for much cheaper nowadays, but I am number 56,284 of whatever. I don't own it on 4K Blu-ray yet, but I will one day. Shit's expensive and I got bills, man. Now, speaking of Star Wars for a minute, the Dark Knight trilogy is the closest any set of films has ever come to making me experience the same kind of excitement and wonder that I do when I see Star Wars. The same sense of childlike awe that I get from seeing X-Wings attack the Death Star, I get when I see Batman flip a truck in the middle of a Chicago street. And Gary Oldman's speech at the end of the film gives me chills even to this day, every time I see it. There have been more accurate and faithful comic book films. There have been comic book films with better fight scenes and more shocking endings, but none of them come close to being the total package like this film does. The depths that it's willing to go to tell its story is something that not just comic book films, but other films in general just don't do. Either they can't pull it off gracefully like The Dark Knight, or they're just too scared to even try. The way it takes itself so seriously and earnestly, while still giving the audience hope that the good guys will win in the end, is nothing short of amazing. And who says there's no levity in this movie? This movie's got some really good lines, son.
What's the difference between you and me?
I'm not wearing hockey pads.
Any psychotic ex-boyfriends I should be aware of?
Oh, you have no idea.
He must have friends.
Friends? You met this guy?
I suppose you're going to lock me up as well. As your accomplice.
Accomplice? I'm gonna tell them the whole thing was your idea.
I know this wasn't the most deep and introspective look back at The Dark Knight. This is basically me just fanning out for an entire video. But smarter men and women than I have already said all the smarty pants things there are to say about this movie. Really, all I wanted to do was celebrate the closest anybody had ever come to putting my favorite superhero on the big screen in a live action setting. The Dark Knight trilogy is my second favorite movie series, right behind the original Star Wars trilogy. And much like the Ridge-Tridge, I view Nolan's saga as one complete story with a clearly defined beginning, middle, and end. And the middle saga, The Dark Knight, is hands down the best of the bunch. And now until forever, I will consider it the greatest comic book movie of all time. And now comes the part where we ask what you all thought of The Dark Knight. Do you agree that it's a cinematic masterpiece, or do you think it's an overrated piece of crap? Let me know down below or anywhere on the internet. And I'm sure that those of you who think it's a piece of crap will be more than happy to let me know. That's cool, bro. I ain't even mad. In the description below, I put Amazon links to The Dark Knight on Blu-ray, 4K Blu-ray, and Amazon Digital, so you can watch it if you don't already own it for some weird reason. I also put links to The Long Halloween and The Man Who Laughs. These two comic book stories are basically the plot of The Dark Knight in comic book form, so if you want to get into comics and want something similar to what you just saw on the screen, these are what you get. Also, in the description is a link to Wulff Den Apparel, our brand new website where we sell high quality clothing with our little new logo on it, including this sick hat. So you can pick it up and look as fly as I do. Or you can cover up your bald spot like I do. Of course, new videos every Tuesday and Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern is Wulff Den Live. So subscribe to see all of that, like this video, and share it with a friend who is also excited that The Dark Knight is turning 10 this week and needs to fan out with somebody on the internet. I will be that somebody. Thank you all for watching. I will see you next time.